This week, in 1991, Eritrean People's Liberation Front marched into Asmara, Eritrea's capital, ending 30 years of struggle for independence. 2 years later, Eritreans would hold a referendum to officially declare their independence and gain international recognition as a sovereign state. But today, Eritrea is recognized by the world as being one of the most repressive states in the world, with tens of thousands languishing behind bars, many forcibly disappeared, possibly tortured or killed. Not only that, but the country does not even hold any false promise of democratization, when even after decades of its recognition as an independent state, it is yet to ratify a constitution, establish a parliament, or allow for the establishment of opposition parties, forcing those with opposition to the existing regime to seek refuge thousands of miles away from their home.
Okay, now let's look at the domestic political situation in Eritrea. When are elections going to be held in Eritrea? There were elections scheduled for 2001. They didn't take place. When is that going to happen?
What elections?
Elections in Eritrea.
We'll see what the elections in the United States will bring about, and we will wait for about 3-4 decades until we see genuine natural situations emerge in Eritrea.
You're saying Eritrea is going to wait 3 or 4 decades before it holds elections?
Maybe more, who knows?
Well, are you prepared to tolerate any kind of opposition in Eritrea?
What kind of opposition? Agents hired by the CIA from Langley, or opposition from inside, or any kind of opposition?
There was something of a crackdown against the opposition by the Eritreans, by your government in 2001. Journalists
Never,
were in prison.
not at all. Not at all. You are disinformed. There has never been any opposition in this country. This is a total lie. And if you're talking about a political process, that is a different matter. If you're talking an opposition that has been fabricated and created by Langley, then you would call that an opposition. I would not call that an opposition.
But decades back, Eritrea had actually been a symbol of accountability and progress in the Horn. Following the defeat of Italy during the Second World War, Eritrea would fall into the hands of the British until September of 1952, when, based on recommendations by the United Nations, Eritrea was federated with Ethiopia, with its citizens having a distinct arrangement that allowed them to exercise rights that other Ethiopians were not privy to, including the right to elect their representatives, the right to establish political parties, and learn and govern in local languages. But just at the eve of Eritrea's federation, Emperor Haile Selassie would start to undermine Eritrea's autonomy and later disband the federal arrangement and close all doors for Ethiopians that had hoped that the arrangement with Eritrea would lead to further democratization for the Ethiopian state. In 1958, Eritreans would start the first organized and armed resistance against the Ethiopian state, demanding Eritrea's independence. That first front would later fragment into 2 organizations, the Eritrean Liberation Front, that retained the legacy of the original resistance, and Eritrean People's Liberation Front, today known as People's Front for Democracy and Justice, the ruling party in Eritrea.
كدمي أستاذ حرور حبيلو أذكر معلم ريفرندم أكايدكم دليتكم تاي مخانو ترى ترسب نترانيرو دليتكم تاي مخانو الرجاجيد أملو دليتكم نتعنت مخانو درجة ملو دمت خبال ذكال من قد قلتكم عالم سميعكم عالم تقبلكم دليتكم سميركم وقعد دليتكم مسمركم نتتحالف يرسعون من تغنم مهارلو نقصنا نذكرهم من تغنم مهارلو بنا ينحكون بنا ينسراسرون إذا حلف حليف الله حدش معراف نجمر إذا حدش معراف ذي أبين تمرب حصرنا حصر اللي يكون إذا حدش معراف ذي حدب العلي حدب تحت التأمامة اللي يكون إذا حدش معراف ذي قون نقولني معرة تونولد حضرات أمونغو هزو تازلو حضرات أفريسنا دقاتنا زفتر وخصلي انتين مهرمبر نمحخ زي نذكره كخون يزول امناتنا.
Eritrea's impending descent from a promising nation in the Horn to to one of the most repressive states in the world would become evident in 2001 when Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki arbitrarily detained 15 senior members of the leading party and journalists after they questioned his handling of the border dispute with Ethiopia. Not one of these detained, almost 21 years ago now, have been heard from since. But Isaias's ruthless behavior, according to leaked documents, would haunt him. Ronald McMillan, US ambassador to Asmara, would describe the president as paranoid. He believed that both the Ethiopian and US governments were trying to kill him and would switch plates with subordinates to avoid being poisoned and sleep in different locations to escape assassination. An apparently constant and repetitive fear for the president. Political analyst and commissioner in Tigray's election commission, Marasa Tsahaye says, Eritrea's democratization is not only possible, but also very much necessary for peace and security in the Horn.
The failure of democracy in Eritrea, the problem of nation building and state formation in Eritrea becomes a problem to Tigray and the Horn. So Eritrea becomes a problem in the regional security complex. So it's better to remove Isaias Afwerki and then support the Eritrean democratic forces to develop their own democratic process. And the international community should actively support Tigray's cause as well as the cause of the democratic force of Eritrea. So the international community has a responsibility to play its role in this regional security framework because the Horn of Africa is one of the hotspots of geopolitics in world politics.
Eritrea, for much of the past 30 years, has been a symbol of oppression and decay, as its citizens have been forced to seek refuge in camps across the world. Its leader, once a promising freedom fighter, turned against his people and ravaged his country. But many still hope the nation will soon rise from the ashes and reclaim its position as a defender of human dignity and make peace with all its neighbors.